This is a list of minerals critical to national security and the US economy. It includes stuff you're probably familiar with like aluminum, lithium, nickel, as well as titanium, which is used in the United States' modern jets. But alongside these more well-known materials, there are 46 more minerals that all happen to be critical for the US's manufacturing and most worryingly are sourced from other nations. Which you might not think is a big deal, and in the case of a lot of these materials and minerals, you're probably right, because they are sourced from reliable allies to the US. But some of these crucial elements and materials arrive straight from the US's main geopolitical rivals. But those minerals pale in comparison to another commodity that has brought the United States and China into a diplomatic standoff. You've definitely been hearing about these recently. They are called microprocessors, and they're responsible for the US's greatest weakness. A weakness that's outside of its own borders, in an ally's territory. An ally who is in great danger. See, today, most advanced processors are made right here at the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC for short. They are the chip factory that produces the fastest and most advanced processors. Manufacturing designs made by and supplied to companies and nations across the world, including the United States and China. But not for much longer. Historically, the Chinese Communist Party seized control of China in a revolution all except for Taiwan, where the ousted government entrenched itself. Ever since, the CCP has sought to take over the island by any means necessary. Geopolitically, Taiwan has become a natural ally of the US, which essentially means that the US has the leverage to cut off the chip supply. This is fantastic for the US, or, well, it was, because China is now doing something about it. In recent years, the Chinese government has invested heavily on microprocessor fabrication, reverse engineering Western technology, and building a self-sufficient supply of processors for the Chinese market and military. If China succeeds in matching or overtaking Taiwanese chip technology, it would end American control of the market, taking away a powerful sanction that America can and has used against their enemies in the past. Even more worryingly, it would mean that they would no longer depend on Taiwan for their military needs, taking away the silicon shield that has protected the island nation for so long. Such an attack would be absolutely catastrophic for the United States regardless of who comes out victorious, as it would destroy their source of semiconductors. Of course, America knows Taiwan is a target and has stated multiple times their commitment to defending the island in case of an invasion, which makes a real attack unlikely. However, the consequences if it were to happen are so severe the US government has begun preparing for it anyway, with the signing of the CHIPS Act, which pours $52.7 billion worth of subsidies as well as an estimated $24 billion in tax credits to bring chip fabrication stateside. This has resulted in 18 new fabrication facilities to begin planning and construction. The United States has also tried to sabotage Chinese reverse engineering efforts by banning the shipping of a multitude of crucial technologies to China, including the advanced chips themselves and the equipment necessary to make them. This is a move that affects companies across the globe, demonstrating the level of influence that the US has over the semiconductor supply chain and exactly the power that they fear losing. So far, China hasn't responded with much more than verbal condemnation and a lawsuit against the US on the World Trade Organization, an action that Martin Rasser, the director of the Technology and National Security Program, described as mostly symbolic. So America has competition, but it's not like America is actively under attack. Well, in May 2021, a ransomware attack hit the Colonial Pipeline, an 8,850-kilometer network spanning the east coast of the United States that feeds a variety of petroleum products from refineries to a multitude of states. The hack completely shut down the pipeline for a week and triggered a state of emergency. Now, it's important to clarify that as far as we know, this attack wasn't perpetrated by any state, but instead by independent criminals looking for a payout. However, this shows just how vulnerable critical infrastructure in the US can be. If random criminals can hold it for ransom, it makes you wonder what a group with the resources of a nation would be capable of doing. And we already caught a glimpse of that with the hack of SolarWinds. On March 2020, suspected Russian hackers accessed the company which makes IT management software and infected one of their products so it would allow the hackers to take control of any computer running it. From that day on, SolarWinds spread the hacked update to over 18,000 of their clients, among which are the US Treasury, the National Nuclear Security Administration, the Department of Homeland Security, and even parts of the Pentagon. Not exactly optimal, I would say, and worryingly, the attack wasn't discovered for 9 straight months, during which the hackers had full access. The breach shocked cybersecurity researchers. Such a thing had simply never been done before. It was so advanced that Adam Meyers, Vice President for Threat Intelligence at CrowdStrike and leader of the cyber forensics team that studied the attack, said this was the craziest effing thing I'd ever seen. It was especially scary because the code could be adapted to infect almost any piece of software in the market, targeting any number of industries. And while this attack was just a spying operation, they could have easily done absolutely anything they wanted, from deleting information to sabotaging physical equipment. Anything can be a target: energy, transport, food production, and even healthcare, as proven by a series of ransomware attacks on hospitals throughout the pandemic, which have already caused deaths. It's truly scary, and is why cybersecurity is now part of the National Security Strategy with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, as well as the NSA, dedicated to its strengthening. It's crazy to me that the US has had so bad cybersecurity, and it's really something their enemies have taken advantage of. But there's still an elephant in the room here, one that we simply cannot ignore, especially when a significant portion of comments in our last video was about this very thing, and that is the societal divide currently gripping the United States. See, a survey ran in July 2022 revealed that 72% of Republicans and 63% of Democrats believe followers of the opposite party to be immoral, along with other classifiers such as closed-minded, dishonest, unintelligent, and lazy. This is dangerous. Political violence has surged at alarming rates, the most obvious being the Capitol attack of January 6th, but violence has extended through all levels of government. Federal judges, local health departments, officials, and even school board members. They are all seeing an unprecedented amount of hatred, threats, vandalism, and attacks against themselves and their families. This has far-reaching effects. It erodes trust in important institutions, it makes it harder for the people in government to do their day-to-day work, and makes honest people afraid of getting involved. Higher up the chain, it encourages elected officials to focus on winning over the political opponents with no thought as to how these new legislation affects the people living under them. And that's without mentioning how everyday citizens start fighting between one another, tearing friendships and families apart, and even resulting in deadly violence. The causes behind all of this are varied and complex, but you might be surprised to learn that not all are internal. And in fact, US enemies have been putting a lot of effort into making sure that the US ends up exactly like this. You see, social media has become a very powerful tool. In fact, I dare you to look at your on-screen time right now. There's a high likelihood you won't be proud of what you'll see. And let me tell you, the higher that number is, the higher the likelihood you're being fed propaganda. Simple but enticing messages with an efficiency that propaganda machines across history could only dream about. As such, foreign governments, and particularly Russia, have found ways to manipulate it for their own goals, using what today is known as a troll farm. Troll farms are groups that use a bunch of different strategies to shape narratives in social media. They will create many fake accounts with real-looking profiles and post stories, which are then used to post or boost propaganda and misinformation. Their objective generally isn't to promote a particular viewpoint, but rather to pit neighbors against each other and sow chaos, fostering political polarization. They do this creating hostility and doubt. They slander groups of people and prominent individuals, push divisive and violent ideas, conspiracy theories, and even get into fights in comment sections in order to stop dialogue. And it works extremely well. So much so that these farms have become an integral part of Russian foreign policy, with multiple units and groups dedicated to nothing but social media manipulations. One of these groups is known as the Internet Research Agency, or IRA. This organization organized protests across the United States about everything from Black Lives Matter protests to Trump rallies, in some cases also organizing the counter-protest. 13 IRA members were indicted by the 2020 Mueller investigation for their actions, but they obviously never arrived to challenge the charges. They were found guilty but remain free in Russia. So the damage might have already been done, as polarization has only gotten worse, and there's very little hope of this ending nicely. A study run by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace studied 52 cases of severe polarization. Of these, 26 saw their democracy weaken, with 23 falling into full authoritarianism. Of the remaining 26 cases, 10 continued to be polarized today, and the 16 cases that successfully depolarized actually contain 7 repeated countries as they polarized again afterwards. That makes only 9 out of 52 cases of severe political polarization that have stopped for good without losing democratic freedoms. That's insane. And even in those cases, it isn't always a happy ending. As the authors point out, almost 3/4 of the cases of depolarization came after major systemic shock, for example a foreign intervention, independence struggle, violent conflict, or regime change. So the odds are grim. But let's stop for a second. The signs are bad, but it's important not to feel defeated, as it's impossible to predict the future. The United States is still the most powerful nation in the world, with strong checks and balances built into the government, something which the vast majority of cases studied don't share. So will they handle these new challenges? Well, I guess only time will tell, but for me, it's important to emphasize that I am a bit concerned about all this, and that's why I wanted to make this video, but I want to hear what you think. So leave a reply in the comments down below. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.